In 1524, the Italian explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano sailed into New York Harbor. A bevy of Lenape Indians dressed in colorful feathers came out in small boats to greet him. But before they could transact much business, according to historians Edwin Burrows and Mike Wallace, a storm rose and chased the Europeans back out to safer waters. The Indians returned to land. The Lenapes were well suited for life in the Hudson estuary. They had no cellars or subway tunnels that could flood. If their footpaths became wet, they would dry out in the sun. Not so for the Europeans who came next. They filled in land that was once water at the same time that the ocean's height has risen by a foot in the last century alone. They replaced trees with asphalt that traps heat and releases it slowly, turning heat waves into deadly all-night affairs. Has this condition continued to worsen? Well, we'll talk about that now. You're in the right place. Welcome back to the Genesis Channel. Will climate change destroy New York City by 2050? These changes in the city's climate are only going to accelerate. According to the New York City Panel on Climate Change, our winters will become shorter and wetter, our summers longer and hotter. The Atlantic will keep rising, potentially turning some of the landfilled areas back into the wetlands they once were. The annual cost of dealing with severe weather will more than double, and that's not counting when hurricanes hit the city's shores. In short, climate change is going to impact nearly every single New Yorker in lots of different ways. We chose the year 2050 for a reason. It's far enough away so that we can demonstrate dramatic changes in the climate, and yet near enough that many people alive today will still be living in the city. But make no mistake, climate change will continue to affect the city after that year as well, even if society takes drastic action today to curb greenhouse gas emissions. By 2050, we'll all be older, of course. The number of elderly will have grown tremendously by then. Cornell University researchers estimate nearly 1.5 million New Yorkers will be 65 or older. And the heat waves, are particularly dangerous for old people. Their health is frail. They live alone. They may be forgetful. According to a researcher at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health, between 1,200 and 1,500 people will likely die each summer from the heat on average, unless adaptive efforts are made, such as increasing the use of air conditioners and improving the alert system. That's 4 to 5 times as many as dying on average each summer now. Sea level rise is yet another example of how ill-suited the city's built environment has become to a changing climate. New York's early inhabitants settled on the waterfront, while developers in the 19th century founded cemeteries in some of the highest reaches of the city. Greenwood, Cypress Hills, and Maple Grove are all situated along the Terminal Moraine, a ridge running through Brooklyn and Queens left behind by glaciers thousands of years ago. It made sense to develop the city that way at the time. Who had heard about sea level rise back then? But now, says Klaus Jacob, a geophysicist at Columbia who also serves on the climate change panel, it's clear the city is built upside down. The irony is that New Yorkers are still doing that. Census records show low elevation neighborhoods are gaining while some high elevation areas are losing people. Bloomberg area rezonings could add about 40,000 more people to the 100-year floodplain by opening up former industrial areas along the waterfront like Greenpoint, Williamsburg to residential development. To help make sure the new residents are safe, the City Council passed a law last year that would require the first habitable floors of new residential buildings to be built 2 feet above the expected 100-year flood level. Scientists have projected that by the year 2100, sea levels along the city's coastlines could be 18 to 50 inches higher than today. Average temperatures on the hottest days of the summer have increased at rates ranging from 0.01 to 0.7 degrees per decade, depending on where measurements are taken in the 5 boroughs. The power to enact major changes, such as imposing a carbon tax nationwide or banning the burning of coal or setting vehicle emission standards, largely rests in Washington. The failure of national leaders to take any significant action has left New York City largely on its own. Therefore, we must become aware of the danger in which we find ourselves. The main question is whether New York will disappear by 2050 due to climate change. It will not disappear, but it will endure great destruction and natural disasters. Unavoidably, some New Yorkers will drown as a result of climate change, and others will have their belongings destroyed by flooding because some parts of the New York metro area simply will not be ready to handle the rising water. Also, some of us will suffer from the effects of the heat, and some will be left homeless. That's why we all must work together to improve and preserve the environment, reduce emissions from vehicles, and start to reduce climate change. Let each of us contribute a little and the results will be visible. Let's save our city. Let's save lives and property. Let's leave the offspring a nice place to live, shall we? So what do you say about climate change? Do you feel it? How? Yes, the situation will be worse, you're right, so we must pay attention to our behavior towards nature. Please let us know your comments and opinions in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Press the bell to be notified when new content is online. That's it for today. See you again soon.